you seeing a similar thing, a kind of audience side demand for exclusively pandemic related technology stories, or are you seeing a kind of a growing appetite for a different conversation?
So I mean, it's kind of there's a few answers to that. So we've had record traffic to the website, and I'm sure that's the same for probably everybody on this panel. We've had record, just like, it's through the roof traffic, and it's also interesting because you have record readership, but also record low advertising. So, you know, in the physical paper, for example, which obviously leads to the website, there's no ads. And so you actually have more space to fill than normal, just because the physical real estate is not taken up by, you know, the usual big ads we have, you know, here, there, and everywhere. So kind of anything COVID related, and that same thing on the podcast, it's like, you know, if you have, it depends, because I feel like every story is a COVID story at the moment. But some just really, if they're really about like, how do we get out of this, contact tracing, that kind of stuff, people just seem to not get enough of that stuff. But I think people are also getting a bit weary of it. It is starting to become a little bit, not background noise, but it's just kind of this thing that is here now, as opposed to this new, scary, oh my goodness, what is happening to the world? So I do think people are starting to shift their interest a little bit into stories that aren't maybe directly about it, or a bit, you know, take their mind off it, or you know, look at it in a different way that isn't, you know, the sky is falling. But generally, you know, it's still kind of the only show in town in terms of traffic and what people are reading. You know, the top 2, 3, 4, 5 stories are usually about COVID. But every once in a while, you'll now get like, oh, I'm going to just read a profile about something that has nothing to do with this, because I can only read so much.
Yeah, I could identify with that.
Could I just jump in? Because you know, the two terms that I sort of came there, you know, somebody's talked about the hunger for these stories, but there's also the fatigue of these stories, right? Like, contact tracing is really interesting, and it's going to have a lot of stories written about it over the last few months. But I mean, I think our whole publication just has contact tracing fatigue, right? Because it's happening on a worldwide basis, basically every journalist had some relationship to contact tracing, and it just seemed like every story was about contact tracing for a good 2 weeks, and that was even before Apple, Google launched, you know, their protocol. So I mean, what I find difficult to juggle is, yes, we're still writing about the contact trace or the coronavirus, and yes, there's still hunger for that. But because of the fatigue, you need to somehow be original. I mean, I'm so sick of leads that begin with something like, 6 months ago, everything was going well for Dave McClatchy. You're right. I mean, like, that was clear for everyone, you know? So it's like not an original thing to say anymore, that things were going fine before this hit. That's just true for everybody. And so to me, that's the difficulty, which is like, somehow, how do you you know, balance the line between people actually really want to know about this, but you somehow have to be original, because the experience that sounds unique is actually what we're all dealing with. And I'm sure we've all been bombarded with, you know, requests from PR companies to talk about some company and how they've shifted to a distributed workforce. And it's just like, guys, everybody's doing that. That's not a story.